That was a great intro.
Yeah.
I have no idea how long you've been sitting here recording by yourself, alone,
You'll find out.
pretending to talk to somebody.
You'll find out when you edit the podcast.
Yeah, maybe I won't. I just won't edit. I'm just gonna not listen. I'll throw up a the beginning music and just see what happens.
Yep.
So welcome to the Grumpy Dungeon Masters, where we don't know what the hell we're doing most of the time.
Well, it's like any good DMing skills. You gotta learn how to improv.
Gotta fucking wing it. Yep, wing it. That's what I do. That's what I've been doing for years. Even though I'm running a actual written campaign now, I'm still fucking winging it most of the time.
And you pretty much have to. Like even though like all the encounters are built out, like we've gone through the book a number of times now, and like just the way they've laid it out just makes no sense.
Oh,
And
it's laid out horribly. Like the chapters are just sort of out of order.
right, and then but then on top of that, it's like the players may want to go somewhere and do something, which is fine that the book allows it, but like it could have nothing to do with the rest of the story. Like nothing kind of like ties together. There are some breadcrumbs, but there's not really many.
Well, it's also kind of annoying. And mind you, I still love Icewind Dale. I'm enjoying running the thing, but just the way it's laid out.
The campaign is awesome. Everything that's in it is awesome.
Yes, it's definitely awesome to run. It could have been structured better. The book itself, running the second leg of things is kind of it's a little bit of a nuisance because they have multiple ways to fall into those quests, which is awesome. But there's like 3 or 4 different locations in the book that are spread out on trying to figure out how to fall into those.
Right.
There's not a centralized location of this is the steps that you should take or could take to get them there.
Right. And unfortunately, you kind of have to read through the entire campaign book from beginning to end and then kind of like make the decision of like, okay, these are the small little pieces that I'm going to do. This is the order that I'm going to do them in. And everything will be successful. And it will be a great campaign because, like I said, the content is great. It's just you have to plan it out very carefully. I've tried keeping it open world, and my last session that I ran this Sunday, which is up on Twitch right now, I meant for them to go to a completely different area. And just because of events that have occurred in the past and characteristics of the PCs, we wound up in a completely different town doing a quest from chapter 1.
Yeah.
And I had to scramble to get the map uploaded online while they were all kind of like talking and dilly-dallying around in town, and just it was an amazing session, but it didn't progress the story much other than, hey, now we want to go out and do this this other quest that's over here, but we have prepped going to the black cabin instead. So eventually we got on track and they got up there, but they want to go back and do the other one that they found that was seeded to them.
Like you know me, I've talked about it before. I hate railroading players. I really do. But because of me doing this on Roll20, I'm just railroading the shit out of things.
Right.
And my players are still having a blast. Everybody's enjoying it. But I'm telling them, if you want to go do this thing, I need a week in advance. That way I have time to hop onto Roll20, gives me time to pull up maps, monsters. That way I'm not spending an hour fumbling around. Oh, and it also gives me an opportunity to read over that section again in the book. There are certain missions in that book I have not read. I just haven't even looked at them because there's so many of them. And trying to pull that out of my ass on the fly, it's not gonna be an entertaining session because I'm gonna spend most of the time reading.
Yeah. And so like I was planning on doing a couple of things in chapter 2, and I was kind of reading ahead today, and then lo and behold, I found out that chapter 3 actually starts midway in chapter 2, which is the weirdest thing.
Yeah, that's
It just
what we're saying is laid out bad.
so like because now that I know that and I know what's in chapter 3 and chapter 4, I gotta double check chapter 5, make sure I understand that correctly. But I'm going to basically spend some time, set up chapter 5, but also set up chapter 3 as well too, and send them towards that direction. So I'm actually going to put things into where they are that will feed more into chapter 3. Like I'm going to make up encounters that will just make sense to the greater scheme of things. Like having
That's what you're supposed to do as a
more
dungeon master anyway.
right. Like I'm gonna have some of the monsters from chapter 3 show up and like assault the players to get the things that they've been collecting from other places that the monsters from chapter 3 are around in. And that's kind of a vague statement for everyone listening because they don't want to give away too much of Icewind Dale.
Yeah, we are still trying to avoid spoilers.
Yeah, it's hard.
Unlike the Mandalorian,
Did you
motherfuckers.
get spoiled? Did you get spoiled all the way?
No, like all of it hasn't, but one of the big reveals was spoiled to me by a YouTube channel that I have never even looked at. I have never seen this channel. I wasn't even watching the video. I was just scrolling through, and main page. Thanks, guys. Yeah, fucking spoilers.
So was it Yoda coming back or Luke?
It was definitely Darth Vader. Darth Vader being alive, and yeah. Hashtag spoilers.
uh, so, speaking of improv and stuff that the DM skills need to know, have you heard of Joe Cat or the guy that does the a crap guide to D&D videos on YouTube?
I've heard the name, but I'm fairly sure it was you that told me about him.
Okay, so there's a YouTuber out there. He like many other YouTubers just plays a couple video games, makes videos of it, and moves on from there. But he has a persona that is a Wiggler from Monster Hunter, which I haven't played Monster Hunter, but I just know that this weird floppy snake head thing is from Monster Hunter. Well, he has that Wiggler persona in one of his videos, and they're called a crap guides. And he does a crap guide to D&D and a crap guide to Magic the Gathering, and it's a fast talking, quick edit video of certain topics in D&D. It explains Dungeons and Dragons far better than most of the videos out there, and it's like 3 minutes. Like, you want to know how to play a barbarian? Watch this crap guide to playing a barbarian. Congratulations, you can now play a barbarian. It only took 3 minutes. Fuck a character sheet. You don't need it. So,
All right. I haven't seen these, but okay. Yeah, sounds fun.
He's been doing these for about 3 years now. He's gone through all the classes. He's gone through alignments, character sheets, and even like how to role play monsters and stuff like that. Well, he released one today, actually today, Sunday the 13th, and it's a crap guide to being a dungeon master. And
Okay.
so I started watching it, and it was very funny, and it was hitting all the tropes, talking a lot about like the amount of work that you have to do to be a DM.
To get
And
no
then
thanks from your players.
he
Yeah.
mentions that. And then I was like, wow, this video is running for a while. Let's see how long it is. I was 7 minutes into a 22-minute video. Like I said, and every other one he's done is like 3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah.
And then it goes off like on this weird tangent where all the YouTubers that do D&D content are making cameos in this game because the Wiggler character of his is running a D&D session to show you how crazy it can be. And they're doing all the tropes like, I want to seduce the bartender. Oh, yeah, well, I want to go over here. I want to rob this rich guy of all his money. And he's like, well, the NPC is standing right here that you need to talk to, or else the world's going to get destroyed. No, I'm going to go outside and burn down an orphanage. And just
I think we've talked about it recently. Have you seen the movie Darkness Rising?
no.
Because the whole movie is literally just a dungeon master going through all of the tropes because he has the worst players ever.
Yeah. And it's definitely a great video, and it's worth a watch. But I mean,
Like he probably just watched Darkness Rising and then made a video about it because that's what it is.
well, it's his spin is quite entertaining.
Yeah.
So definitely go out and watch those.
Yes, that sounds entertaining. You can link it to me later, and I will check it out myself.
If I remember, I should put a link when we actually post this. It'd be
Yeah,
fun.
we do that occasionally where we're like, I'm gonna do this, and then we forget to add a link. We forget to share anything. We just talk about it on the podcast. At least I did remember to add the picture of Craig. So like a day or two after the podcast came out, but
Yep. So on other big news, I released my one shot. It's finally out there in the world.
yes, we
Just
did. We talked about that last podcast.
just in time for Christmas, and I'm halfway to the bronze medal. So I need to sell 25 more copies. So
I've
get
already,
on it, people.
I bought my copy of it. I actually did buy a copy, even though I already had the final product.
Well, now you get all the maps and other cool things.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted those. I'm considering running it for my players at Christmas time.
We'll record it because I can't seem to set up a group for it.
I mean, I could probably set up audio. I don't know that I'll ever release it, but we'll see.
Everybody's busy.
It happens. I mean, we've all been there, man. What you do is you just run your actual players through it.
I don't know. Like I have, like we got to keep pounding at it to get them through it. You know.
They're
Or
right.
else
They'll be
it'll never
finishing up.
happen.
They'll be finishing up Icewind Dale like the end of next year, and 2 other campaign books will have already dropped.
Right. I want to know what the next campaign book is.
I don't know. I am starting to feel like that myself, though. Like this campaign, and I am having a good time with it, but it feels like it's dragging on. Like it's just a slow campaign.
I
Even
think a lot of that is the open worldness of everything because
well,
like every time you go to a new town, you got to describe all the new town and all the new people in the town.
all of my campaigns are open world generally. Like I'm used to that. It's just and it probably is just me feeling this way. I don't think it's really moving that slowly. Like they're up to 5th level. They're already out into the open world, but it just feels like it's dragging and taking longer than my normal campaigns do.
Well, there's no major dungeons that they have to spend a lot of time in, so there's no like combat to combat to combat. It's like you go there, there's maybe an encounter or two, and
Yeah,
then you go somewhere else, and then there's a
yeah,
counter or two, and you go somewhere else.
yeah. The
So
last location they went to, there was literally just a single encounter, just one fight. That was it.
I think when you get to chapter 3, and especially 5, and especially 7, when there actually are massive dungeons to go through, it'll pick up a bit.
Most likely. I'm just used to running games where I will, if they go off to do some little adventure, that adventure is going to last. It's probably just going to last the one night, but there's going to be 5 fights, 6 fights. There's going to be a whole bunch of combat throughout the course of it, as
Yeah,
opposed to a single fight and 2 random encounters.
yeah, and that's the other problem too is all the random encounters are fucking deadly.
And they can be. I have personally been manipulating random encounters, and I don't care if my players know that. I told them last night there are 2 random encounters that if you just play them wrong, you die. Just make new characters.
Well, I mean, my group ran across one of those and they survived.
Because they played it right. But if you play it wrong, you're just dead.
So one of my players, so I made up my own random encounter. I wanted to throw a couple more goblins in there because I like goblins, and the fact that there's a goblin town in Icewind Dale is fun. So I had them set up an ambush where they're trying to, ambush people to get supplies. Cool. So I was like, all right, I'll throw in a polar bear because they had trained polar bears before. I'll throw in a goblin boss and the 4E goblin champion because 5E has no monsters at all that are fun. And I threw in a couple goblins, and so it was considered a hard fight, borderline deadly against the players. But I knew that they could just pick off the goblins and handle it pretty simply. So I started the encounter. They were surprised by it. So the goblins got a surprise round against the players.
Right.
Um, I had a polar bear charge out of the, from across down the road, and just double moved into during the surprise round up next to the ranger. Well, the ranger had initiative before the polar bear, and then animal friendship the polar bear. Okay.
Yep.
So the polar bear, the hardest monster in the encounter, gone for a single spell. He's just sitting there like dirt,
Yep.
drinking Coke, like I'm having a wonderful time. Oh look.
Never underestimate the power of magic spells.
So um they killed the goblin champion, even though the champion got a crit on one of his hits. 2d10 plus 2 damage is still not a lot of damage. And they won, and they had a polar bear. And then I had to spend 30 minutes of roleplay time afterwards with the Goliath and the Ranger, role playing how they're training this polar bear to become a pack animal for them.
Hey,
And
that's what players want, man. They want
and
cool
then
stuff.
and then the bard's going off, and he's basically reconfiguring the dog sled with his woodworking skills because he just happened to have woodworking skills
Oh,
to make a sled big enough for a polar bear. So they essentially have a full size wagon being pulled by a polar bear, and then another dog sled with 4 dogs now. And then they have 2 axe beaks. One's named Cornelius, the other's name is Feather Duster, and it's
I like Feather Duster. That's good.
it's it's a crazy thing. Like
So
they're
so
doing good.
it sounds like your campaign has sort of taken a similar tone to mine in that in Icewind Dale, there's nowhere to buy magic items. It's hard to even get magic items. So instead of collecting magic items, it seems like parties are collecting animals.
Well,
My players have 7 dogs, 3 dog sleds. They have 3 of the axe beaks. They now have a snowy owlbear, and they have an eagle as well. They did find a magic item, a gray bag of tricks that lets you actually just pull out animals at random. So it's like a goddamn farm. It's a zoo. Yeah.
so another animal, I guess, that my wife picked up with her drow is the bush from the Lonelywood quest.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
So they killed the druid,
That counts. Yeah.
and then she found the bush, and then she made friends with the bush, and all she had to do was like eat the berries from the bush, and the bush is like, oh yeah, everything's great now. I have a new master, and
Yep. Hashtag spoilers, but it's pretty minimal spoiler.
I got something in plan for all those berries she's eating, so she has to keep track of all the berries that she eats.
She's gonna turn into a bush.
I
I mean, look, that's what we were told as kids. If you eat watermelon seeds, you'll turn into a watermelon. So,
Oh, she's turned into a blueberry. Oh, we got to get her to the juicer factory to get her juiced.
yep.
But
Fucking Willy Wonka.
so yeah, this entire last campaign I had was entirely improv from beginning to end, and like I said, we didn't get really to the encounter that I wanted them to do until 10 minutes until the end of the night. So
Yeah, I didn't get. I honestly, I don't feel like I did a whole lot this last game session, but I left my players at the start of the next leg of the game. So next weekend when I run it, we'll just be able to drop right into things. No shenanigans to get there.
and that's kind of what I want to do. Like when I start my own like open world, like my own homebrew campaign, have it be open world and have it the players just kind of go off and do what they do, and then I'll just keep recording everything, and then that's kind of like how the story shapes up to have the first like campaign book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I forgot you were planning on trying to write the campaign.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works. I mean, especially with my group, they seem to want to go off and do a lot of kind of crazy things, you know.
Yeah.
My wife was making fun of me though. Um, she mentioned to me, I don't even remember what the topic of the conversation was. She just mentioned to me that I am really bad with voices and accents, and all my NPCs sound the same. And I know that's a weakness of mine. It's not going to
Right.
change because I'm not good at accents, and I don't do accents, and I just don't. And
I personally am. I'm pretty fucking bad with accents as well, and a lot of my NPCs will sound the same.
I
Can't
don't
be
even
helped.
try. I don't even try.
I have
And then I
I
mentioned,
have a couple of different accents I can do, and that I can obviously do Southern very, very well. Like if you need me to do a redneck accent, I can do that anytime you want. And then I can do a really shitty Cockney accent, but it's passable. But that's about it.
so I mentioned to her that our other friend DM Eric, he's got like a couple voices that he does, and he does them pretty well.
Yeah, he does a
And
Scottish one all the fucking time.
Scottish one, the raspy one, the kind of like effeminate one, and those
Yes.
are his voices. Um, and my wife is just kind of like, well, at least he tries. And then she took a
Oh,
drink of water and looked away. I was just like, oh, the shade, oh,
uh,
man.
just fucking throwing heat.
But overall, it was I really do gotta like improve that aspect of my DM kit, and that's part of like what that video was. It's like you got to do all the maps, you got to do all the improv, you got to do all the voices, all the characters, know all the stats. Um,
Hmm.
but he did make one quick point which I found interesting, which was um, as a DM, you don't have to know all the rules.
No, definitely
You
not. I don't.
you need to know how to reference things and look up things more than memorizing things and be able to regurgitate them.
You
And
need
he
to
made
know
it,
how to. You need good Google foo. Like, yeah, that's pretty much it.
he made an offhanded joke of against the American school system, where when you go to school, all they do is they just teach you, here are the facts, memorize the facts, here's a test, write them down. No one remembers any of that stuff once the test is over, so it's useless.
Yep,
The skills you need is basically how do you research, how do you organize your notes, and how can you reference things back. Those are the key skills that you need. And in D&D, in the education, in your professional career, those are the skills you need to master. Um,
absolutely. Yeah, that's more important than anything.
I have I've seen a lot of different methods. I use D&D Beyond. I'll pay for the service that has everything there as an encyclopedia that I can look up. Have to do it all the time.
Yep.
I don't know the details of the animal friendship spell. I had to look it up. You
Yeah,
know.
I know exactly how to find it in the player's handbook, and if I don't, then I can just hop on Google and type in the proper question to bring it right up. Because it's all, I mean, everything in those books is all on the internet.
Yeah. And it got me thinking about an older DM that played at Adventures League, the one that like ran games but didn't really run games, and then was all snooty and snobby to everybody else.
Yep.
He had a his own personal copy of his Dungeon Master's Guide, and he is one of the people who he memorizes things but doesn't know how to look things up. And the reason I say that is because his Dungeon Master's Guide had so many of those like little plastic tabs or like reference tabs that you put like on the edge of a
Hmm.
page so you can quick reference to those. He had thousands, and I'm not exaggerating there, thousands of those things, to the point that you couldn't tell the difference. Like he may have had a method at one point in time, but it's like a drapery of just post-it notes hanging off the edge of his pages. Like he can't use that. And then on top of that, his DMG was damaged. So like it was just the cover of the book and then all the chapters out of order on the inside.
Oh yeah, and I want to say, as far as the books being damaged, the fifth edition books, at least the early printings of them, were horrendous for staying together. Like
Yeah.
I've already bought a second copy of the DM's guide. I've bought a second copy of the player's handbook because the first ones just fucking fell apart.
Right. But how could he reference things? Like I would
Oh
actually
yeah,
watch him
yeah.
walk
I
through
mean,
character.
I'm sure there's a method to the madness for about the first 20 tabs, but after that, you're just fucking lost. I mean, no. There, once you have more than about 20 tabs on one of these books, it's fucking over with.
Yeah.
I have a one or two books floating around where I do have them tabbed, but it's like 10 tabs total. It's to get to the start of the chapter. I am not going to be marking individual pages because you can't fucking look that up that quickly. Just you kind of have to figure out where things are at in chapter order and then just do it that way. If you're going to use that method at all, which
Yeah.
I don't really recommend it.
I have one on my DMG, just one,
Yeah.
and it's to the
Magic items.
no, the loot generation tables, so I can quickly
Okay. Yeah.
get to there, roll on the tables. I'm thinking of putting a couple in on Frost Maiden because the random encounter tables in chapter 2, but how to fish is in chapter 1. And then
Yeah, well,
like
I mean, it's not super hard to find. The only places that I would consider putting a tab is pretty much the random encounter table, and
yeah.
I know how to find it. I know roughly what page it's on, so it doesn't even take me that long. Any if whatever chapter I'm working in, like whatever adventure I'm sending them on, I will just take a piece of paper or a card or something and just place it in the book so I can find that.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, I bookmarked the shit out of it, and it's I can flip between the two real easy.
You need to figure out the method that works for you and just master that technique. It's
Everybody has
crucial.
their own. I'm old, so using technology, D&D Beyond, and all that's not my first go to. My first go to is to actually just pull out the book that's sitting right next to me and find it. If that method fails, or if I think it'll be quicker, I'll do it on the internet. You just use D&D Beyond, so I assume they have a search function or something on there.
Yeah, and Roll20 has one too. They actually have a pretty extensive. I think the player's handbook or the basic rules is up there. So
Mhm.
I have a couple of their pages bookmarked, like conditions. Conditions is bookmarked, and when I open up my folder of bookmarks, whenever I play D&D, it's one of the pages that opens up automatically because I can never remember what incapacitated does, even
Oh,
though I
I
use it
can't either.
every time.
It's funny too because they simplified the shit out of things for 5th edition with the conditions, and most of them I can't remember. There's only like 10 of them, and I just can't remember what they all do.
What does stun do again? I don't know.
I
It
don't
stuns
fucking
you.
know. Let me just here. I'll flip to the page in the player's handbook, of which I know where it's at. So, yeah, find the methods that work for you and run with that. So one thing I came across the other day, I was not running, but I was playing in the Maw campaign, and it occurred to me, and I've seen this before, and I still think it's kind of silly, but it's a necessary part of D&D. Uh, Tell me if you've run across this before, where you have laid out the story for your players, and they've collected all the information over multiple adventures and so forth, and then they run into an NPC that they have to then detail out all of the information that they've gathered. So basically, you have learned the dungeon master's story, and then you get to read it back to them. Have you ever run into this?
No.
Never? Okay, well, maybe it's because you run campaigns. Like, I don't know if the campaign modules do that, but I've run into it many times over the years. Now, hell, I've had players do it to me. Like, I drop the information, so Jay, I know all the information of my own campaign, but then I'm going to have my players basically read it back to me because that's what their characters have figured out. That's the information that they've obtained. It just I feel like it's a necessary part of the storytelling, but at the same time, it feels a little bit silly to just be reciting something to somebody that they already know.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah, like
surprised. Yeah.
most of the times they don't. They're just going out to get a MacGuffin and bring the MacGuffin back.
Yeah, I mean
It's
that's campaign writing 101.
yeah.
Let's just make this shit simple. They're not trying to learn history or detailed information and shit.
Some people are. I mean, my wife is trying to undercover stuff about like the goings on and like her old god and stuff like that for being a warlock.
Mhm.
So I have to give her information like that, and I do get kind of irritated though when I do give them a key name or a key item to look for, and then they just like, oh, who are we looking for again? That
Yep.
kind of annoys me, but at the same time, I wouldn't write that either.
Yeah. So certain campaigns, if I don't feel the campaign is heavily influenced by the history or the world or anything, then a lot of times I won't take notes. For the Maw campaign, I've been taking notes very heavily. for campaigns that I run, my players tend to take notes. They've actually done a real good job with taking notes for Icewind Dale. Like if I mention a speaker of such and such town, they can recite the name back to me faster than I can. Not because they remembered it, but because they have the notes there in front of them.
Yeah, my guys aren't doing that.
They should be.
Well, the speaker of the towns, they're kind of like, I think they know the main guys in Bryn Shandir, and that's about it.
I mean, hell, my players know the people who own the inns. One of them, he has a quote unquote girlfriend. It's one of the NPCs that he ran across in one of the inns.
Mm-hmm.
So like they've taken a whole they're actually running with it and role playing with it and building life for their characters. It's fantastic. Like I love it. That's a lot of times I have a hard time getting them to do that, but they're fucking rolling with it with Icewind Dale.
Yeah, my guys may regret a little bit of that, but we'll see what happens. Really.
Yeah, it's still early.
Yeah.
What are you? You're fourth level.
Yeah. I may let them do Black Cabin and then just be fifth.
Yeah, my players just hit fifth, like pretty much near the end of this last game session, so they're not super far ahead.
Yeah. I did. It's also pretty good that my players don't take notes. I actually screwed up when I was doing RP with them in Bryn Shandir, giving them the quest to kind of go up and clear out the Black Cabin based on things they did in the game where they murdered a couple townsfolk and hid their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so the speaker of the town basically walks in to them and like confronts them all at the table, not even with guards behind her, because that's just how furious that she was with them, and just how confident in her own self that she is. Like the marshal,
be careful what you say. Don't give too many spoilers here.
No. It's just the marshal came in later. The guards came in a little bit later because she was just that far ahead of them. Just angry about it. And so when I'm kind of like giving the details out of like the quest and who was giving them the quest, I said that Cooper, who's an NPC in Bryn Shandir, walks up, hops on the table in front of the Frost Maiden, and tells you X. And then they went, and they all thought that the speaker was a Frost Maiden because I messed up.
I got you. Yeah. I have done that before. Oh my god, I've done that before. This was a long time ago, so I'm not going to remember much of the details, but I do recall there was one of my campaigns I was running, and I had dropped information ahead of time, and I had overcomplicated things in my own head. So then when it comes time to finalize the information, I dropped it differently. So it sort of reversed the information, and then my players were very confused, and they told me this. I was like, "Oh shit! Hold on a second, backtrack that. We're fucking forget everything I just said. Let's do it this other way."
There was a part of me when I made that mistake that kind of just went, I could probably roll with this, and it'd probably be pretty good. Like, what if she was the Frost Maiden?
You'd be rewriting a lot of the campaign, I feel.
Not really.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
But it was very interesting, and I feel very embarrassed that I did that. But overall,
so one thing I noticed as well, and this occurred to me. So a while back, and we've talked about it a couple times, I think, about damage resistances, and more specifically, like damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, if it's not magical.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see monsters like that, you see them in Icewind Dale occasionally. There's a few of them that are resistant to non-magical damage, or possibly even immune to non-magical damage. Icewind Dale doesn't really give out magic items.
Nope.
So whereas you thought it was super fucking weak and unimportant, that ability, in Icewind Dale, that ability matters a fuckload.
Well, I think they realized they balance all the monsters in the game around that resistance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to have a brute style monster, and they give it that kind of resistance to it. Basically, it doubles its hit points without mathematically
effectively,
doubling hit points effectively.
Yep.
But in every campaign except for this one, and heck, even in my one shots, starting with a single magic item is very common.
Yeah.
Pretty much, it's the bar standard. And when that happens, it makes that resistance irrelevant.
Yes.
It's still kind of irrelevant in Icewind Dale, insofar as you can buy a Moon Touch blade. Assuming you allow them to buy a Moon Touch blade, because that is a common magic item, which is
And
available in
that
Green Chandelier.
never even occurred to me. And I don't think it occurred to my players either. I've told them that they can buy any common magic items that are in Xanathars at basically double the price. And I don't know that any of them have ever even looked. So now that I have said that, I'm sure every single person who uses a blade is going to go buy a fucking Moon's Touched weapon.
I didn't mention it when we were playing the game, but I did bring it up. I said, "Hey, remember, you guys can buy common magic items here."
Yeah.
And they're all like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna get billowing capes and smoke,
Yeah.
pipes."
Yep.
I was like, "There's always the armor that equips on a bonus action, you know."
Yep.
if you're a fighter and you can't sleep in your armor, so
yeah. When you hear magical blade, I always think, oh, it's got to be a +1 sword. It never even occurred to me that a Moon Touch blade would technically count for that. It doesn't do anything other than have a magical enchantment on it, but it would overcome that damage resistance.
it does. It does.
Yeah, like Icewind Dale, it's real just picky on handing out magic items. I'm playing in the Maw campaign, which it's a homebrew game, and we're running into issues of attunement, like being attuned to items. We can't get. We have I won't say a very limited amount of magic items we can get, but there's limitations on what we can get access to, other than what the DM hands out. But we're able to buy the cheaper end magic items. But so much of the stuff that we found, like I'm completely maxed out on attunement slots. Like I can't attune anything else. So just trying to find better items to what we already have is very, very difficult. Like I understand why attunement is a thing, but I really, really dislike it.
Yeah.
And the fact that I just think it should be a higher number. 3 items at 10th level. I think it should go up kind of by level, maybe, because having 3 attuned items by we're 12th level, 11th level, or some shit like that. That's fucking easy. We could we need access to more than that.
So, I think the Star Wars game does it by level. Like you get an attunement per proficiency, which is a very good balance. And if you're going to home rule, I suggest go with that. It levels up with the character. For every proficiency slot you have, you can attune a magic item, minimum 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say you start with 3, and then when you get that next proficiency bump, you get 4th, and the next proficiency bump another one.
Yeah, I mean 5e isn't a perfect system, but as a DM, you're allowed to make rules. I mean that's just the short of it.
Yeah,
unfortunately, systems like D&D Beyond won't account for that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always just kind of hand wave it in a way. Like if you have to attune to like I think like the boots of spider crawling or whatever they were, where it gives you climb of your matching your speed. You don't need to actually attune that on the D&D Beyond itself. You can just say that you are attuned to it and you get those effects. But you always want to be attuned to like a +2 sword because that affects the calculations that the application uses for you.
Roll20 doesn't have anything like that. If it's equipped, it's just active. So there's no limitation.
You set the value. You set the values of it, if I remember correctly. So
you can, yes. Yeah, if you just drag it over and drop it, it'll automatically adjust it. If you don't do it that way, then you can manually adjust it.
So I mean, sometimes like if you want to bump up their power or can help things out, then you can do that. You can also put caps on like damage resistance to magic items. Like it may get a little more complicated, but you could say that common and uncommon magic items fall into the able to be resisted category for those monsters, but a rare or legendary item will subvert that. There's
Well,
just there's
that's literally what third edition was doing. It was resistant
oh
to so they could have immunity or resistance to weapons that were +1 or less, resistance to +2, +3, and so forth. Like
yeah,
certain, to fight a Baylor, you better have like a +3 weapon. Otherwise,
Vorpal longsword.
yeah. But if you don't have at least a +3 sword, you're barely gonna fucking hurt the thing.
Yeah. Oh, so by the way, I looked up Xanathar's common magic items.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the second and third one on the list: bead of nourishment and bead of refreshment. Both
Food and water.
food and water for one day.
They call those rations.
It's just I just like there's so many things in here, like the dark shard amulet,
Mm-hmm.
where you use that as your spellcasting focus if you're a warlock, and then you could put a cantrip in there that's not on the warlock spell list and use it as long as you pass an Arcana check.
Yep. Yeah, I have actually used that before. I like that item. It's nothing
Well,
amazing, but
here's one for your team: the Hat of Vermin. This hat has 3 charges. While holding the hat, you can use an action to expend one of its charges and speak a command that summons word that summons your choice of a bat, frog, or rat. The summoned creature magically appears in the hat and tries to get away from you as quickly as possible.
by chaos, what have you done? Now all of them are going to go out and buy this fucking hat.
The creature is neither friendly nor hostile and is under your control. It behaves like as any other creature of its kind would, and disappears after 1 hour or drops to 0 hit points.
Yeah,
The hat regains all expended charges daily at dawn.
yeah. It's just going to be a goddamn zoo everywhere they go. So the gray bag of tricks, we had a lot of fun with that years ago. It became a thing that we referred to as the weasel test. So how do you set off traps? You pull out a weasel out of the fucking bag and you throw it down the hallway to see what happens. So anytime they get access to this thing, it only pulls weasels out in my campaign worlds. Anyway, that's a sort of in joke thing, but yeah, the weasel test, as we refer to it, is just using animals to set off traps. So that item, you pull a rat or a bat or whatever, and just chuck it down the hall, see if there's any traps down there. I mean, if it gets blown up, it's not like it's actually killing anything.
That's great. I love it, and
Yep.
that's what makes a campaign too. As a DM, you got to find those little fun things and just stick to them, because otherwise you're gonna go crazy.
Oh, we have tons of those that just flop between our campaigns. Like me and Johnny, we're the 2 DMs. We just rotate weeks usually, or a couple of weeks, and then he'll do a couple of weeks. And our campaigns, we've been running this for years now. So the stuff that has happened in his campaign, if he runs a one shot, or maybe it shows up in my campaign, uh, his campaign, one of our other players and his previous character had a thing for owlbears. So he shows up in Icewind Dale and ends up managing to get him a pet owlbear. It's just something that floated over from that other shit. Yeah.
I think I think my favorite magic item in this list is the magic key, or the mystery key. It has a 5% chance of opening any lock.
Oh, God, only a 5% chance. What kind of garbage is that?
Well, you just stick it in the key lock and just turn it until it works. Essentially,
Yeah.
it's a free open any lock key.
Well, no, you'll stick it in. If it does not open it on the first try, it will never open that lock.
That's not what the wording says.
That is how I would rule that as a DM. You get one shot at it.
Well, once the key unlocks something, it disappears.
Yeah. I mean, you just you could. I mean, they're so cheap though. You could buy a couple. You could buy like 5 or 10 of these things. Just have them on a key ring somewhere, and just try 10 of them on every lock that you need to unlock. Maybe if you try it 10 times, there's a reasonable chance that you'll get it.
Another favorite item of mine is the unbreakable arrow.
All right. Just an arrow that can't be broken.
Just an arrow that can't be broken. So what does that mean?
That is powerful, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I mean,
If
you
you're
just
if
stick
you're
you stab that into the ground in front of a door. That door can never open until somebody can smash through it. It'd be fantastic for climbing. Just get you 2 of those things.
um yeah, like anything like you need to bar something open, like a door that's slamming
Oh, yeah.
closed, just
Yep.
stick it right there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't it's not that it can't be moved, but at the same time, it cannot be broken. So they're gonna have to, if you get it wedged properly, they have to bust down through the door, the wall, the window, whatever you're blocking with it.
Yep.
Oh yeah, even better. Like if you're trying to just think you've got a castle and they're trying to kick in the doors. They've got a battering ram and everything, and you just put a couple of those, holding it tight, not going anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be creative. So the improv isn't always on the DM. The improv is also on the players as well too. You got to get creative. One of my
Oh yeah.
players had a very creative uh, use
Hashtag
of
we
one.
hashtag weasel test. Get creative.
He had a very creative use of one of his. I'm going to say racial abilities, and I would have let it work, and I did allow it to work, but like everyone would have seen it, and it would have blown, you know, his cover of sorts. And he decided not to do it. But a lot of times you just got to ask the DM, and it's really all in how you ask the DM too. Like if you come up with something that's very inspiring, like I don't really give out inspiration. I just kind of let the fantastical happen.
Mhm.
If they want to run and use like the canter of endless water to dilute an acid pit, you know, yeah, you can do that. That will work. It's just going to take a couple hours.
Yep. Yeah,
you
I,
know.
I I love for my players to be creative, and I try not to shut that down. If there's not a hard rule, in the writing and the way it's worded, if there is not a hard set, this will not work, then I'm probably going to allow it. Like I like my players to go off the wall. I like them to outwit me as it is.
But don't. But if the DM says, "Hey, that's not going to work," don't keep pressuring them into making it work. Don't like
Yeah,
demand a skill check to happen for
yeah.
something. Just,
The
just
DM's going to tell you how it is. You can point into the rule book where it says otherwise. But if the DM still says no, this is how we're doing it, their word is final. Now that being said, if they're doing it and they're still being shitty about it, then you might want to find another DM. But
yeah.
that's a different conversation that we've had multiple times on here.
So yeah, we're getting close to the end of the year too.
I know
Just
we've been doing this since what, July now?
July. Yeah, almost.
Yeah, 6 months worth of podcasts. I can't believe we're still kicking ass and doing this. Hopefully, people are still enjoying it. Uh, I had
I hope so.
one. I had one last thing I wanted to bring up before we end this podcast. Have you heard the rumor about about Hasbro potentially selling WotC?
I heard the rumor that they were thinking of selling it. Um, I think they're not going to. I think Magic the Gathering is making too much money right now for them to dump it. I mean,
Well,
I mean,
they have been moving around, and mind you, I don't think they've moved Magic, but they have been moving around certain elements of their company under the Hasbro banner.
yeah.
Magic, I think is still under WotC. D&D is still under WotC, but I know some things like the D&D board games and stuff. Their board game section has moved under Hasbro, so it is still possible that they could maneuver things around. I agree with you though that Magic is probably making them a lot of money, and then they have the Magic the Gathering cartoon coming out that's probably gonna do well. There's a lot of talk about a D&D show that's supposed to be happening. So
Yeah.
those, like that's their top IPs. I don't know that they would really want to get rid of them, but the rumor is still floating. There are a lot of companies that go through the exact same process that they seem to be going through right now that end up selling off parts of it.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is they are shopping around. They are asking people like, how much would you buy
Mm-hmm.
Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering for? I would hate for
So
them to break it up, but that would probably be the only way they could sell it.
yeah,
Hasbro as a company doesn't like Magic the Gathering or Dungeons and Dragons. They're not into books. They're not into card games. They're focused on toys, the toy line, and board games. D&D has some board games, but not really. So they're really kind of, I think maybe they're trying to refocus back into what they're good at, since they have so much production
yeah.
available to them.
Yeah, when it comes to gaming specific companies, there are not many that would be able to afford WotC. Asmodee is the only one that I've seen the name pop up. Asmodee's they're fucking huge. They have a lot. But personally, like I would rather see like the IPs of D&D and Magic to go to somebody like Disney or Warner Brothers, because there's so much more potential there than just board games and tabletop games. You
Also,
know,
the idea of selling it to a non-publicly held entity as well too would be interesting.
how so?
Like getting back to the kind of like the roots of like, hey, we have having just a person or another company that's not publicly held in the stock market buy the company and run it. That way, they're not answering to executives.
They can't.
Like,
Nobody can afford that though. Not easily.
right, not easily, right? Because a lot of what's happening in Magic the Gathering right now is 100% because they want their bottom line. It's all investors making the call. That's why Secret Lair is out there, and
Yeah,
they
all these
keep
fucking
bringing in the
crossovers, Power
lucky.
Rangers, and Godzilla and
Yeah,
other shit.
I mean, well, it's cool and it's interesting, but at the same time, it's like there were the last set of Magic the Gathering had 3 different collector boxes come out. Yeah, a special collector's edition, a set box edition, and the normal booster box. Like that's too much. Like it was too much when it was just a booster box, and now you have something that's $100 a pack in a booster box. That's insane. Like
Yeah,
that's
that is
not
ridiculous.
sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not. No, people may buy it because it's a novelty, but you just feel like you're kind of squeezing the money out of people who are your fans, and they're going to go broke.
Yeah, it is literally a cash grab from the top 1% of the Magic players who can afford that kind of shit. Like most of us cannot afford that. I can't. Mind you, I don't really buy a whole lot of Magic, but when I do, like I'm expecting $3 to $4 a pack, and if it starts pushing much past that, there's no way I would keep buying Magic. That's just ridiculous.
And I think a lot of it has to do because of how successful mobile games are. Like you look at Candy Crush, or you look at like the angry guy looking to the left and yelling games, where whales swoop in and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars buying troops and buying exclusive. Craig, you son of a bitch! I told you, do not disconnect on me. You listen to every single word I said. I'm coming after your furry now.
Well,
That's
that's
all
all
for
I got.
today. Have a good
Yeah,
day.
that's all I got for this podcast. See everybody next time. Thanks for
Yep.
listening.
Bye.